following podcast may contain some adult language. You've been warned.
Those of you who got an invite, welcome to Nerdprom.
No matter where in the world you are, we're all nerds! International. With the hyphen.
Welcome to Finding the Narrative, the Genesys RPG Podcast. This is a show dedicated to the Genesys role-playing system from Fantasy Flight Games, a show in which we, your hosts, discuss all things Genesys from both a player's and a GM's perspective. I am Tony Fanning, and with me, as always, is my good friend and co-host, Chris Holmes. How you doing, homie?
Oh, I'm doing great, man. My Vikings won today. I always have to tell everybody that they won. Haven't been able to do that for the last few weeks, but still. Went and saw the movie Mortal Engines.
Yeah, so did I.
Which is basically it's our setting, man. We could drop that in our setting or vice versa. But really, what I'm really excited about is who we got on tonight. Mr. Eric No Sleeves McGee Lamoureux. Sup? Dude, you muted, stupid.
I'm still muted.
No, you're good. You sound good.
There.
All right.
What an entrance.
Yes. Welcome
the best
to the
entrance.
Isn't it though? That's awesome.
Thanks for having me, guys.
No
Good to hang out with you.
Yeah, man. So I asked this of everybody. How did you start your role playing? What did you start with?
Well, for me, it was the Choose Your Own Adventure books. I started with that, and in Canada, translated in French because I played in French back then. Mm-hmm. The same company that published those books also published the Dark Eye RPG, which is a German RPG that just recently got translated to English. But I borrowed that book from the library thinking it was Choose Your Own Adventure book, but it was actually an RPG. Then I'm trying to play the game by myself, and I don't get the whole GM reference and what's going on. How am I supposed to play that
and
game?
It's in German? No.
So I had one of my cousin who, he was my best friend until we were all grown up. He played D&D back then, so he knew what that was. So we started playing that game. He's like, "Yeah, I'll show you. We'll play." And we mostly played one-on-one or sometimes with my brother. And then, we moved on to Warhammer. A couple years later, his mom got him Warhammer First Edition. We played that for years too. And then was Rollmaster. That's the first game I bought. And we played that for years too, late 80s, 90s, all the way to, all the storyteller system back in the 90s. That was pretty big. All cool. Vampire, werewolf, and all that. So, yeah, I did. I was just on the show, and the guy asked me the same question, and I'm like, "Are you going to be disappointed if I say I didn't start with the red box?" Because that's the answer everybody comes up with, right?
That's mine. That was what I started on too. But dude, it's nice to hear that.
I started on Oriental Adventures, so.
Well, I don't even know what that is. So
that was first edition AD&D, right there, Tony?
Yeah, that's what we started with. Then we realized we were starting in the middle. I had to start over, but
yeah, it's funny. Depending on where you are in the world, it's different. We had Manuel on the show, and for him in Germany, it was all Shadowrun and the Dark Eye. Those are the two games that.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's what they play over there. D&D isn't as popular. D&D is the US all the way. Then you go to the UK, it's Warhammer. So it all depends.
Cool. You go down to Australia, and they were just stepping out in their backyard trying not to die.
That's right. They were LARPing over
there. Yeah. All right. Well, dude, great having you on. Finally, it's been So,
listeners, I want to put a disclaimer out there right away. This is not going to be a generally Genesis content show. Generally, we try to do a lot of Genesis content. We're not going to have a lot because Eric is more of a Savage Worlds guru. But what we brought him on for, and today's show and episode name is The Con Job with No Sleeves McGee. We're going to discuss creating a convention game or a one-shot. And we're going to cover how that's done a little bit in Genesis, but mainly
in general.
Overall in ARC. Yes.
Yeah. And I think Eric will bring in...
That applies to everybody.
Yeah, it does.
That applies to every game, I think. So.
Yeah. And Eric will probably be... I mean, we'll be making references to Savage Worlds, more than likely. Well, definitely. That's a guarantee. But yeah, I mean, we'll try and keep it as generic as possible. We will have our Advantageous Threats. That'll be Genesis heavy, but for the rest of it, it'll be a little more generic, creating adventures, which I think any GM would be able to get, good information out of this. So stick around, we hope.
All right, so what we got for news, buddy?
We don't have anything. Damn you, what? FFG. Oh, by the way, went there Friday. There was a water main broke. Went there to quote-unquote work from there, because it's what I do. They didn't have food, so I had to go down the street to the source. But that's okay. But the only other news that I have was really not news, just basically a quick little report. I know last time I said I was going to go down and join this Legends of the Galaxy game, which is a community-run Star Wars game. Now, granted, it's not Genesis, but it is the narrative dice system, so it was pretty fun. Nick ran a great game, played with Eric, Spencer, Noah, and Matthew there. Thanks, guys, for a great time. A few of them, I think, were listening. I think Eric and Spencer listened to the show, and they were like, hey, do you do something on the internet? And I'm like, yeah, I have this podcast. They're like, oh, wow, that's a good one. So yeah, if anybody's interested in running Star Wars, the FFG Star Wars game, go out onto the Legends of the Galaxy site, start a game in your area, because Nick wants to create this, I think there are people in Australia, Germany, in Texas,
They're doing it kind of like a living campaign.
Yeah, kind of a living campaign kind of thing. But it's good, pretty cool stuff. So, that's all the news.
Okay.
Oh, I did see the Legends of the Five Rings Emerald Empire book at the source too. So, beautiful book. Damn. But that's something else.
Completely. Yeah, that's something entirely different.
Something all right. Completely different.
So we have some listener feedback selected for today's episode. We'll start with my good friend Dale. Dale Fisher, one of my grognards, says, okay, damn it. I thought of a setting you guys could run in Genesis. Spaceballs! I would play the fuck out of that. The game would be three types of humans to play. Your standard human, like you find her anywhere in the Ford Galaxy, the Druidians, and the Spaceballs. Other races would be a droid, a Mog, and of course, Dinks. That's all I've got so far. Have at it. Oh, no. Dale, you have to do this. You have to do it yourself. So, it sounds like a great, fun one-shot. That's kind of why I brought it on to today's, because you could totally set up a new Spaceballs adventure of your own, mimicking some of the fun from the movie. Getting up to ludicrous speed, shit like that. You could have a ball with it, and you could do it as a one shot, and it would be hilarious. A lot of gamers would love it.
You can have a space ball with it if you want.
Yeah.
Bump. Alrighty then. Anything to add there, Eric?
I mean that does sound like a good con game there. So it's on top.
You could do it in any setting or any system too. You could do it in Savage Worlds. You could do it in easily.
Totally.
You just need maybe the sci-fi companion and the core book.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay, and then second piece I have here is from Samuel Barrett over on our YouTube channel. He put a comment, said, hey guys, thank you so much for the video. I always appreciate your humor and creative flair for making Genesis content.
Dude, we have humor on the show?
I don't know.
I don't try.
I'm not funny. But
Too expensive.
Too expensive. Yeah.
It says, love your setting. I can't wait to see what else you come up with. if I had any suggestion, it would be the Fire Amalgam's ability. Now, this is feedback from our last show.
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea, but when I picture an enraged fire elemental, I imagine waves of angry heat pouring off of it and making it a serious hazard to all nearby. In game terms, I think something like once per session for the duration of the scene/encounter, you spend 2 to 3 advantage on a melee check or 2 to 3 3 threat of an engaged enemy's melee check to inflict burn equal to your presence rating to an engaged opponent. There are a bunch of ways you could go with it, like maybe giving a couple of boost dice on coercion checks in non-combat situations to offset the ability's inherent handicap in a social or intrigue environment. Just a thought. Anyways, sorry for the long post. Hope you like it. Thanks again for everything. I can't wait for the next episode. Peace, Sam. And then he says, TLDR is Genesis rocks and so do you.
Awesome. Yeah.
So I'm not the master like you guys are, but what he's talking about here, could it just be a cue for, a narrative cue for when someone rolls a despair or a threat trying to attack that creature, and then you turn around and you say, hey, you just caught on fire?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it could be. It could be any time someone rolls against fire amalgam. Now, fire amalgams in our game are a player race. So we were designing the player races in our last show. We were designing those player races' abilities, and we kind of had it to where they could wreath a weapon in flames. And that was what we originally put. But after getting Sam's email or Sam's message, we kind of dinked with it a little bit, retooled it, ended up calling it Fiery Countenance. Mm-hmm. And it has many of the same qualities that Sam gave it, except for I took away the ability that make it just on a melee check. It's any check on that the player makes while they have this activated during an encounter. They may spend 2 advantage or 2 threat from an enemy's roll to inflict burn on someone at engaged range.
Yeah, so set them on fire, basically. Yeah.
So it's not just a melee check. They could just be doing a social check. They could be doing a magic spell,
an athletics check, maybe or something.
Yeah, and and they can spend advantage from that to inflict burn upon people at engaged range.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Sam.
Yeah, thanks, man. That was great suggestion.
Now, as far as our little feedback that we put in there that we wanted from our fans about races that they wanted to add to Primordial Machinus, so far we have one.
Mm-hmm.
We have received the Pierced Cyclops from Stefan Dragonspawn.
Yes. It's a great race. It was fun.
During my playtest that I ran last weekend of it, of the game, Chris made a fire amalgam with his new ability.
Yes, thank you, Sam. Appreciate it. I burned some shit. Awesome.
Yeah, great. My friend, was kind of a mix of Nerds International folks and my grognards. Mm-hmm. My buddy Dale, he made a Clockwork mech pilot, which is kind of cool. Yep. And then Jen, she made a human intellectual archetype artificer, mm-hmm. And she had a lot of fun with that. A
weird scientist, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yep. She's got her big, weird science gun that she absolutely loves.
That was so cool.
And then we had Stefan, Dragonspawn, decided he wanted to join us, so we let him play his Pierced Cyclops.
Yep. It was pretty cool.
So he made a Pierced Cyclops Templar. Which of the order that I had created, the Templar of, I can't remember the name of it, the Triad of Synchrony.
There you go.
Anyhow,
okay,
it came out pretty well. We had a good play test. We kind of explored a little bit of one city and kind of got into some steampunky. Well, I had this idea of a rope city built inside of a crater and everything.
Yeah,
it really kind of came out well with, I think, the way it play tested out and had that feel. Dale said it scratched his cyberpunk itch a little bit.
Yeah, that was cool. And the picture, what I pictured when you were describing that rope city, I just saw it in that friggin' Mortal Engines movie, man. In the floating, basically floating rope city where all the aircraft just kind of connected up to it. I'm like, what the heck? That's exactly kind of how I pictured it, or pretty close to what you described. So it was pretty sweet. Yeah. That was pretty sweet.
So yeah, we had fun with it.
Yeah, man.
So shall we move on?
Let's move on. All right.
All right, welcome to 50 Pieces of Awesome. This is where my good buddy Chris here goes out into the interwebs, the vast wilderness of the wild web, and finds something interesting for us. Now, you didn't have to go far this time, buddy, did you?
Oh, no, I did not have to, you cocksuckers. I had to go to Drive-Thru-RPG, basically. Actually, I had to go to my computer because I had already downloaded this a while ago. There is something called Wise Guys. It's a setting that Mr. Lamoureux here has created. And there was this demo kit they put out for Savage Worlds. It is basically an alternate Las Vegas 1990s. There's anecdotes, setting rules. He's got an adventure in there, edges and hindrances that they've added, some PreGems, 53 pages of awesome. And got the creator on the show for this. And just had to let you know that it's top notch, man. It was really well done.
Yeah, that was basically a playtest document, because that was me trying to reach out to people to try it and give me some feedback so we can make it better. And so we went all out, 53 pages free for a demo. It's big, but there's a lot of fluff material in there. So, since we're not on the Savage Worlds podcast, it's basically me doing like 1 year of research and putting some of that in like almost 20 some pages of fluff that can be used, for anybody basically. Because, we're talking about a mob setting here, and when I started on this, I'm like, why isn't there more mob settings? Because most people love these movies, right? Goodfellas, Casino, they're awesome movies. And when you think about it, or well, maybe it's just me, but from all my decades of experience playing, every time you play D&D or whatever, you end up in a tavern, and then someone just starts having an attitude with you. And what do? You fold? No, you dish it right back. And usually you end up beating the crap out of that guy because he looked at you the wrong way, or he said something he shouldn't have. So I'm like, when I play, we all play like gangsters. We're supposed to be heroes. We might have a sword. We might be slinging spells, but we all play gangsters, really. So I'm like, this is perfect. Why not make a setting out of this, So that's how it started, basically. And that's then, awesome. Like you said, we put that together, and now it's a year later, a year and a half later, almost. Oh, wow. Well, 6 months from that. This was back in May that it was released.
I think so.
Since then, I mean, it changed a lot, but without this, it wouldn't be what it is now. And you guys were the first ones. We tested it. That I got to run it for. So appreciate that. Tony rocked the main guy there, the guy that didn't like ice in his drinks, and Chris was playing a sports handicapper.
That's right.
And he ran that great interlude scene in the elevator. And for those who don't know what an interlude is, it's basically just a big narrative scene that the players take over instead of the GM telling telling everybody what happened. It's the players that take control of the stories. And Chris, while being a Genesis and Star Wars GM, comes naturally to him. So he ran a great scene with everybody was kung fu fighting on the elevator, the music playing in the background, and that was awesome.
Yeah, man. Yeah, so this is the little things you put in this, like mob speak,
I was looking at that.
On a couple pages. I mean, that's great. I mean, I don't know. It just kind of draws you into the setting a bit. And the challenge table in the adventure was like, I mean, it really makes this replayable for the most part. You just can randomly roll, or no, it's like you draw a couple cards, I think, in that challenge table. And
that was for a heist generator, so it's just to generate heist on the fly there. So it's just a bunch of ideas to make it more fun.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in here. Lots of good stuff, and we'll have the link to it online on our Podbean on the website. So
yeah, check it out because it's gonna go off the store soon. We're gonna replace it with a new updated document that's gonna come out early next year. So now that it's free, grab it. Have some fun. Convert it to Genesis, run that. It's
very easy to do. It's really all you need to do is capture the fluff of the setting if you wanted to totally capture that, and you don't need anything other than the Genesis core book for something like this that you could do. I was looking at possibly doing something like that for a one shot, and not necessarily taking this 90s Vegas thing, but taking more of like a 70s gang street fighting feel kind of to it. So, and looks great. I love it. Beautiful trade dress in it. I think you guys did a wonderful job catching the feel. I love the poker chip page numbers. Those are pretty cool. And I hope when you do the final document, it looks this pretty, because I'll definitely get in on that Kickstarter.
I'll show it to you guys. It looks 10 times better because we got Mr. Carl Kiesler to do our trade dress. So,
nice. All right,
Carl, the king of beautiful. Yes.
So
that's great, dude.
Looks awesome.
Cool.
Well, let's get on over into our main topic, shall we? Oh, wait, before we go, Chris, why don't you do the honors?
Well, Eric, we just want to officially give you 50 pieces of awesome.
Oh, thank you.
We'll make sure they show up in a Crown Royal bag.
Yes, Crown Royal bag. That's right. Oh, yes, and by the way, the chicken bones that Tony and I had mentioned about, this is the gentleman that spent 6 months eating fucking chicken bones, and I am actually going to put a picture up of them because they're freaking brilliant. I rolled them. I'm like, all right, let's roll them. All right, let's figure it out. Well, we got the boost dice covering the setback dice, so those cancel. But there's this die over off to the side. You gotta have like 2 successes and a triumph.
It was a fun prank. Fun prank. Great. I loved it.
All right, man. Well, let's just go on to the next section then. All right, everybody, we are back. We are going to be, you don't have to open up your books of Genesis tonight. No. What we're going to talk to Eric about while we brought him on is writing and prepping an adventure run an adventure at a convention. So, yeah. So
So what is a convention game for you guys? Is it just to run at a convention, or it's a bit more broad?
Well, for me, this is more about running a one shot for a group of strangers more than anything. That's what a convention game is. That's what you do when you go to a friendly local game store to run a game. Yep. You're running a convention game. You're not doing a one shot for the friends that you've had for 25 years. Not generally speaking. You're generally just going to sit down with a bunch of strangers and try and basically showcase what your game can do.
Right. Yeah, exactly. They may or may, for me, it's also, they may or may not have played the game, the system. May not have ever played a role-playing game, too. So there are some challenges there, too. Mm-hmm. When you think about it.
Yeah, I agree. It's basically, I think Tony nailed it. It could be at your local game store or at a game day. I know over here they have like a game day at a church too. I'm not sure I want to take my dirty mouth over there at church, but it can be anything. But basically, yeah, for strangers, so you don't know who is going to sit at your table. Right. that changes a lot of things, because usually you're going to run for your buddies and you know which strings you can pull and all that, but now you can't do that for a con game.
That's true.
So the first thing you want to know when you're doing one of these is what time frame you have.
Yeah.
How long do you have to run it for? Most of the time it's usually a 3 or 4 hour block.
Yeah.
Yeah. Over here in the States, 3 or 4 hours. I hear in Italy it's an hour or 2 hours. That's all they have. That's rough.
Yeah. I don't think I could do a structured story in an hour, but
no.
You spend most of that time just teaching people how to play the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, in an hour, it would basically just be instruction and maybe a set of rolls.
A single encounter. That's about it.
Single encounter, probably.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that would be like. You guys remember when they did when 3.5 did the dungeon delves?
Yeah.
Where they came out with an entire book of. You could do something like that, where you just do one encounter in one little tiny dungeon delve type thing.
Yeah.
Because even at Gen Con when I was there, well, that was still like 7 or 8 years ago, but you have people, trying to sell their books at their booth, and hey, you want to play a demo? It's only going to take 20 minutes, and they got everything set up. They got their character sheets, and you just run through, just a little encounter there just to get you the feel for it. But I think this episode is more like Tony says, 3 or 4 hours for, where you can get a decent game out of it, I think.
Yeah.
Right. Well, you want to showcase what your game can do, what you can do as a GM. You want visual presentation. You want a story. You want something that's going to grab people and get them to sit at your table.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yep.
So, what's the first thing you do, Eric, when you sit down to think about an adventure? What's the first thing you do for a con game?
Well, it turns out that I think it's the same thing as you, because I'm looking at the show notes here. I just broke the fourth wall, by the way.
It's okay, Deadpool. We're good.
I think that's something that people often forget are the PreGems, because they're the most important part, I think, of the con game. I've sat at a game where the GM hadn't thought about the PreGems. He just had a stack of them and just handed them out. And it's like, imagine, Chris, you sit down, someone gives you a pilot archetype, and the whole game is inside a dungeon. You're not going to have fun, right?
No, probably not. I probably wouldn't. Yeah, that would kind of suck.
You'll make the best out of it, but you're going to leave the game and be like, I'm not sure about this game.
Now, if he was a quick draw pilot, that could help, right?
Yep. Yeah.
But unless there's a mining cart that I could pilot through the underground dungeon, then no, probably not those abilities. So
yeah, it's like on your character sheet, you've got this whole ship all statted out, and there's even a portrait of the ship, and then you never get to play with it. So it's kind of lame.
Yep.
Yeah, that would totally blow. Yeah, no, the key is to make memorable pregens with interwoven backgrounds. Now, that's one thing that I know that you've done in I was looking at your playtest just a few minutes ago, and you've got several of these characters with kind of almost like interwoven backgrounds where they kind of know each other and things like that. I know when I did my Vanguard Squadron, that was one of the things when I came up with the backstories for all the characters. Each character has at least one other character that they have a bond with, whether that's a I don't like you bond, or whether it's this is my, in the case of like the Comtech and the commander of the crew, they have a father-daughter relationship.
There you go.
Yeah,
you did that with the backgrounds you wrote for the Middle Earth game we ran too.
Yes.
With them, a couple of them, knew each other or whatever, had some backgrounds and had met, and that I think that's important, because you immediately, now the people sitting at the table, they can kind of connect with the other players through their PreGems in a way.
Yeah, so. You don't have a whole campaign to develop.
Correct.
Relationships with the other players and characters at the table. It has to be right there from the start.
And these backgrounds don't have to be like 5 pages long, because I wouldn't read it if I was at a con game. I read backgrounds when my players write those long ones to me for sure, but a paragraph or two, would be fine. What's that?
I just said liar. I read the ones from my players. Liar.
Actually, I do. I'm sad that way. Man. I'm sad that
if
way.
It can't, I heard someone say if a character background can't fit on a tweet, it's too long.
A tweet?
That's interesting.
That's short.
That's only 142 characters or something like that.
Yeah.
That ain't right.
So here's I threw a little something in here in our notes about conflicts of interest. Now, running a heist game or something along those lines, like through Wise Guys, right? You may have somebody with backgrounds that may have PCs that may have conflicting motivations. Would you put that in there? Would that make for an interesting game, you think? Or
is that more actually, I wrote Forget About It. That was a couple years earlier, before Wise Guys. And what I did is on separate cards, the players had secrets. So there was things going on between each character. One guy, while his daughter is married to one of the Wise Guys, and that guy is beating her, and which is kind of common for Wise Guys. I mean, it's not nice, but that's the kind of thing that happens. And then another thing is that you can't sleep with another man's wife in there. And another Wise Guys had slept with that guy's wife. So they all get these secrets. It's great potential for conflict. And then you let the game play, and then you try to get them to open up on these and get into conflict, some kind of PvP type of thing. And I mean, when I ran it a bunch of times, and nobody took debate really, because everybody wants to sit at the table and just be, we're going to get along because we want to have fun playing this. But then a couple times at the end, when they were done with the mission they had to do, then everything just exploded. And they're like, okay, now we're done doing what we had to do. Now I got a score to settle with you. And then it went PvP. And nice. A bunch of people played it too, and that's what they told me. It always goes downhill at the end, and it should be. It's about gangsters. That's what they do. So awesome. just a little tip like that. Just write a little secret on an index card or just a card, and
an index card. You hear that, Gary? We're talking index cards, baby. No, we're not.
And give it to that player whose character is, and
that's a great idea.
See what happens. You never know, especially for a con game. You don't know who you're going to sit with at the table, and some of them might enjoy that. But you have to watch out, because that's one thing you don't want at the table is players actually fighting each other. The characters is all right, but the players, not so much.
No, you don't.
Right?
We just go back to high school there.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And put this in a Genesis light. the one way that you can interweave the characters and their backgrounds is through their motivations, their flaws and their fears, their desires and their strengths. You're going to roll those things, or you're going to, in my case, whenever I do pre-gens for Genesis game, I always choose them and make sure that they're, intertwined.
Yeah.
Yep. Particularly my Deep Madness game, there was one of the characters, the one who is it's most likely to happen to, is afraid of drowning. So I mean, as the the scuba guy, the guy who's going to actually go out and he's afraid of drowning. It's his biggest fear. But that game's about fear. So
yeah, it's going to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you make the pre-gens first and then build your story around them, or you build your story, your adventure, your scenario, and then, or as you build it, you make characters that you said there's a scene where there's a scuba guy, or maybe they have to go underwater. Do you think, maybe one of the pre-gens should have a fear of water, The
answer is yes. It's created organically, as the term. I will get it right this time. I think a couple shows ago I kept using the word ergonomically. Chris is like, no, that's not what you mean. They're created organically. They just kind of happen. I start with a general story idea of what I want to do. I want to do this, but I want to twist it on its ear. My example, I'll use an example of my Vanguard Squadron game that I did for this year's Con on the Cob. I wanted to do something that ran concurrent with episode 5, the Battle of Hoth, something that ran alongside of that, that kind of told the story of people in the background of that. And so I already have the Vanguard Squadron pre-gens. They exist from something else. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have to do anything for that. But if I was going to create new ones for that, they would have been created organically with the story as I was going. Well, I need a pre-gen that's going to be able to, you got to, for instance, in your heist game, you've got a safe that needs to be opened up. You got to have a safe cracker.
Yeah.
So whether you have that character already generated, or whether you do it or add it to an existing character, you still have to add that skill in there, so that for every problem there is a solution in the game.
Yeah, it's about giving those characters their 15 minutes of fame within the adventure, so they can shine and say, hey, I was useful. They needed me for that. And it's one of the advantages of a con game like that is usually in a campaign, you end up with whatever characters your players make, and you have to try to put that together. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work all that well. But with a con game, by creating your own pre-gens, that you're at least on the right track, I think. Right. That's why I like it.
Yeah, there's a time and a place to showcase each character if you can. And you should be able to in that 3 or 4 hour time frame, you would hope. Yeah.
All right. So let's get into that story that we're going to create. I've got the 3 acts. We talk about creating a story. Most of your movies, even your TV shows, have 3 acts. You have the opening act, which is where you lay down the background. It's kind of your opening premise. Your middle act is where all the conflict occurs. If I'm wrong here, tell me I'm wrong. You guys, and then your third act is where you kind of wrap it all up. All your conflicts come to an end, or either some are left unresolved. That's a great way to leave it. But your main conflict comes to an end in the third act. So that's kind of how you structure-wise. To make a campaign or make a one-shot, that's a great way to do it, is to have for instance, premise. I go back to ones that I've written in the past. The D&D adventure I wrote for you guys for Con on the Cob 1 that we went to. It started out with the group coming into an inn, and they meet the protagonists of the adventure, or the antagonists of the adventure. That you meet the kobold, the charismatic kobold. You meet the princess. You meet, all the dwarves, and you have this kind of big party at the beginning of it all. And that just is an introduction to the setting and to the major players.
You kind of draw them in. So that's what you're saying there. That beginning should kind of draw those players in, how their PCs are kind of interacting with the world in a way, kind of give a good feel.
Gets their buy-in. I actually kind of have a note here. I started actually in media res, which I'm horrible with Latin. I'm not sure what that, where that term came from, but what it means is in the middle of it, in the middle of the fray, in the middle of a fight. I started out in that campaign. I started it every time I've started that one shot. I started with the wargs attacking on the pass, and basically giving the players a sense of urgency to move forward, to get to the inn where they're safe. That's how I normally start it. But anyhow, back into it. Then we go into the second act, which is where the conflict begins. It's the king, his relationship to his daughter, and how she was, quote unquote, kidnapped by the kobold, and
Chigo, and then the boyfriend and all that. Yeah.
Right. And then, of course, there's the resolution at the end. How do you resolve everything at the very end of it all? Is it a big battle with the king and his men? Is it a big battle with the kobold? Is it, what, and so on and so forth. But anyhow, not to reveal anything more from that adventure, because I may run it again for NivCon or something like that.
Cool.
But yeah, that's kind of the three acts. And do you have anything to add to that, Eric?
No, that's basically how I think it. Then I split it up into scenes. I usually go for about 5 scenes. For 4 hours, 3 or 4 hours. You don't have time for much more than that. Granted, some scenes might only be 5 minutes, but you have to leave some in the back pocket too, optional, if it's running too fast, or if it's running too slow. You have to have scenes that you could just cut there because they're not that important and you need to move things along. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I usually end up with 3 to 5 different scenes. Now, those usually will be, I usually don't go more than 4 encounters, whether those be a social combat, whether they be an elaborate social encounter, whether those be a combat encounter, a chase scene. We won't do more than 4 of those in a 4-hour block, because it's usually going to take about an hour to resolve each one of those.
Depends on the players you got too. That's the thing. That's another question I would ask you guys. I mean, I've sat in some of you guys' game and seen you guys run, and you guys pretty much same as me. I mean, you'll go up to 6 players easy, and I've seen you guys have 7 or even 8. So, but what's your ideal number for a con game?
I don't
3
know
to
if
6.
I would. Yeah, I don't know if I don't think I could do any more than 6, because as a player, I know. Even with the best GMs, even with Tony running at the other at Con and a Cob, when we had, what'd you have, 7 or 8?
At 8.
Kept it rolling pretty fast. But that's a rare thing, and I want everybody to have a chance, to kind of get to have something that they do.
Yeah, your magic number's like 3 to 5, with the maximum being 6.
I think so. Yeah.
And you just have to account for that, for how long this is going to run, because running an adventure that you can run in 3 hours for 4 players, if you get 6, it's going to run longer.
Yeah,
so you're going to have to cut things from it. And that's one thing Chris and I, when we did our Middle Earth game, a good example, we divided that up because we were both playing and both GMing, so we divided that up into 1-hour blocks. I get an hour, he gets an hour, I get an hour, he gets an hour, and then in my first hour I had some optional stuff I could throw in if it went short, if we didn't have enough players. And likewise for in the third hour, I had a couple extra things that I could throw in to lengthen it if needed, but mainly just keeping it to an hour. If we had, I planned for the larger number of players and then things I could cut out.
Right.
Or things I could add in. I planned for the smaller number of players and had things I could add in. Jesus. Ooh.
And if you know the experience, when your players are sitting down now at our con game that we ran, we kind of knew everybody's experience level once they sit down, right? But you won't know whether people are experienced or not experienced, and getting that information up front, whether there's a sign-up sheet for it or not, but definitely before you start running, getting that information will then start your mind thinking, okay, half the table hasn't played, half the table have. Maybe we can intersperse the people to kind of help each other out, and then already know, all right, I'm probably going to have to cut here, just thinking, if you don't have, real experienced players, it'll definitely go longer, because you want to be able to teach people coming into the game. Yeah.
Allot yourself like 15 to 20 minutes at the beginning of the session to just,
I'd say so.
Either whether it's covering the game itself, or whether it's teaching the game to new players or moving people around the table, things like that. Allow yourself that amount of time, period.
Yeah.
Well, that's something important that Chris mentioned, and maybe that should have been at the top. But when you run a convention game, I think it's really important to advertise your game the right way. It's about setting expectations. I've sat at a game. I signed up for a game thinking it was a Savage Worlds game, and the GM didn't use any of the rules in Savage Worlds. And, he's a great GM, and it was kind of fun, but it wasn't what I was expecting. It's just like if you guys say you're going to run, Star Wars, Fantasy Flight Star Wars, and you're running D6 Star Wars instead. It's still Star Wars, but it's not what that person signed up for.
Right.
And how long are you going to run that game, especially at a convention? Because people have a busy schedule. If they sign up for your game, that means that, if it ends at 3:00, that means they might have a game at 3:15 somewhere else. They need to go there. You can't run over. That's not fair to ask people to say that. Number of players, if it's a mature theme in your game.
Yep.
I know the sign up at Call on the Cob ask you, age range, if it's going to be mature, all that stuff, because people bring their kids over to play games too. And if they sit at your game and everybody's cursing, or it's about raping and pillaging villages, which is cool if that's what you want to do, but make it up front so that people that don't want to do that don't sign up for your game,
Right. Always have your boilerplate at the top where you're going to talk about that, your expectations. I always say, players, we're not going to be opening books during this session. There's going to be rules calls. I'm going to make them on the fly. We're just going to err on the side of making it fun. And that's the key, is to, boilerplate that out, get it out in the open right in the beginning, and make sure you have your expectations and the players' expectations on the table right from the start.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool. So we've gone into some encounters.
Yeah.
Unique and memorable encounters too.
Yeah. That's another thing. Unique encounters. I hear about, when you hear about having your con games, you don't hear about, we had another fight in a bar.
Yeah.
You don't hear about, we had another car chase in where we were trying to run from the cops. That's not the kind of stuff.
Shopping for weapons.
We went shopping for weapons.
We had to get some oats for our horses. We had to
in all the years that I played, I've gone to cons and I've played at con games. The ones that are least memorable to me are the ones that are always the same, where you go into a dungeon and you do a dungeon crawl and you walk out with treasure at the end. I've done those. Those I don't remember very well. But I remember vividly this going into this pyramid to try and find the Book of the Necronomicon from 2 years ago from your Primeval Thule, Chris, that you ran.
I'm glad you did, because I'm glad. That's pretty cool.
That was a
game.
memorable scene.
Thanks, man.
That scene drew us in with going into that pyramid with the whole, like, the pygmies in the jungle. It drew from the Mummy 2. It drew that image.
Right.
You know.
And, and I'm going to stop you there for a moment, because that stuff came in because I ran a playtest for my Grognard group here. And my daughter actually joined them, and we played through it. And I had about a half an hour at the very end going, okay, hit me with it. What I do wrong? What can I improve? What can we improve? And one of the suggestions was, you know what? If you have the whole freaking jungle come alive, undead, and just basically come alive like they're being forced into this pyramid, that'd be awesome. So I think Drew, Eric, and Kyle, and my daughter Alexi for all that, and Clarence for all that feedback that they gave. So playtest these adventures, and your encounters will your encounters will be memorable because you get the feedback from your players. That'll be good. How you can improve it. So yeah, that was sweet.
Good times.
Yeah, I like the casino floor. And then the hotel rooms from yours, Eric's, from your first Wise Guys. Yeah, the whole where we ended up in the hotel room, and that was that again was a memorable scene, not necessarily because of it was different from any other mob movie, but because it was so iconic for being in a mob movie. You know, you see that casino scene, you see that hotel room scene, and you've got this vision in your head. As soon as you laid this is the casino, and you guys, I've got this vision in my head. Everybody knows where to go. Everybody knows what to do. Yep. So use classic tropes well and subvert others, I think, is a key to that, making things memorable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked your tavern. Now, granted, yeah, we didn't start in a tavern, but we ended up in a tavern with the dwarves bringing out it was a celebration of this keg of mead, beer, dwarven ale that they've been making for the last year, and this is a celebration on it, and everybody just wakes up in their hotel room the next morning going, what the fuck just happened? You know, I mean,
that's the thing.
Yeah.
That's what Tony meant by turning tropes on their head, because it's usually you start at a tavern, you're sitting there, and then someone comes and say, hey, I got a job for you, and then you go off and that's it. But instead, while most of the session was spent at the tavern, it wasn't about just drinking and being given a mission. It was part of the plot. The tavern and their patrons were part of the plot.
Yeah.
So.
And interweaving that together so that when they do wake up with the hangover the next morning and what the hell happened, why am I blacked out?
Yep.
They had such a memorable night the night before. Nothing honestly could have gone wrong. I mean, everything was fun.
Yeah. Everything's just fine the next day.
All right. So we kind of dipped into it, but playtest. I've got that down here. Every adventure that I run for a convention or a one shot, I will playtest with my Grognard group. They've been great over the years of helping me with that. When I tell them, hey, I got a convention coming up, I need to playtest this, and I'll usually get 2 to 3 volunteers from them, and then kind of coerce 1 or 2 more, so I can get them to sit through it, and then they will give. These are people that I've played with for years, and they give me trusted feedback. When you do playtest, make sure you have someone on the other end of the playtest that can give you trusted feedback. Yeah. Because well, even if it's not constructive, even if they say it's absolute shite, dude, go back to the drawing board. It's got to be somebody you trust.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But yeah. I don't have much to add to that, to the playtest. Just if you have time, or actually make the time, so it'll make it better, and you're not wasting the player's time at the convention or even at the local gaming store. You know, when I spend some time out of my life to go to the convention or go to a gaming store, those 4 hours, 3-4 hours, I want to remember it. I want it to be worth my time to go there. And, you know, as a DM, I will want to make it worth their time going there too. You know, so.
And that's where we get into this last part is, what do you know, we all have played Theater of the Mind games. We all love playing Theater of the Mind as well as using miniatures and maps. But for a convention game or the one-shot at your FLGS, you want players to take pictures at the table and share them on social media. The way that is going to happen is if you have presentation, handouts, cool-looking pre-gen characters, maps, minis, pre-built terrain. That terrain you had for your wise guys at Con on the Cob, Eric. Oh my God! How many months did you put into that?
About 6 months, because I had to teach myself how to do that. I had never built terrain, so it was me learning on the fly, watching YouTube videos and you know, scrapping stuff because it didn't work out. Some of them I had to redo like 3 or 4 times, and then painting all the minis. I painted about 20 minis for that, so it was a lot of.
It was crazy, but it was visually just anyone walking by went, oh my! There were people just walking by taking pictures of your clouds with the smoke
markers. Yeah.
The smoke markers. Those were beautiful. There were just random passersby. I noticed. I mean, players at my table, because I was running my Age of Rebellion right next to it.
Yep.
And I had players at my table that were wanting to get up and go check out your table while you're running that. And I'm running just as visually appealing a game over on my side, but there was just something beautiful about the work that you'd put together.
But you don't have to go that far, really.
No, you don't.
You don't have
I mean, that's like the high end there. That's the you know, that you went to the Carl Kiesler bar, as I call it. You know,
it was a personal challenge, and it was also part of the promo for my game. But I mean, I look at what you do, Tony, and I mean, you got. So your gear is awesome. All the stuff you got something for everything. You got your neoprene mats, and you got your minis, and you got your toys and all that stuff. And I mean, that takes years probably to collect all that stuff, but a lot of money. But everybody's got that stuff, and you know, it doesn't take much. Right. But to have a centerpiece that you can put at the table that the players can gather around, because as we mentioned, you're going to end up with people that don't know each other. But to have something to look at, it sort of creates this kind of bonfire event or phenomenon where people gather and then they'll point to something on the table. Hey, look at that. And then they'll start a conversation. It's a bonding moment. So, I mean, Theater of the Mind is great, but for a con game, you kind of have to step it up a little bit. Make an effort. It's going to be worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people in this hobby, most of the ones that I run across that are players are introverts, and you got to draw them out of themselves. With an introvert, you've got to give them something to engage with besides another human being. Give them an environment to interact with, and you'll see them start to shine. Each individual at the table, and that's it. You're pulling them to that centerpiece visually and drawing them in. And to put this in a Genesis light, when you have printed maps and things like that, you don't need grids. That's all handled in narrative range bands. You don't need anything fancy like that. Heck, a picture of from above of, you know, a trailer park is just as good as you know,
buildings,
three-dimensional three-dimensional buildings. As long as you have, you know, this top-down view, and then when players try to interact with that environment, encourage it. Allow the use of triumphs and advantage and threats and despairs to dictate things in the environment.
Right.
There was one game that I ran Savage Worlds one shot that I ran at one of my local game stores, and I ran Alien versus Predators in Jurassic Park.
Nice.
And I had little elements that could be added when a character would, when they would roll, they would botch. When there was a botch, I would throw in complications when there was a botch. And I had, little because when you're on a dinosaur island, there's herds of dinosaurs moving through. So I had little herds of dinosaurs that would move through the area when you're fighting the freaking raptors, and all of a sudden here come all these Gallimimus just running through the area. It creates a complication, and I had little minis for all these little freaking dinosaurs that would come running through the area. I had them ready to go.
Hey, it's amazing what you can find at the dollar store.
Yes.
Hell, all the Dungeons and Dragons, a lot of the Dungeons and Dragons monsters were created with Gygax and them just grabbing those friggin' plastic, insects that you'd get at like the story. The rust monster was one of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. One thing that I have on here for so the maps are great. What I like is cheat sheets for the players, for inexperienced players. Now, somebody brought something for your Genesis game. There was like a bookmark that had the cancel it, the dice on either side of the bookmark, right? Very intuitive. Yeah,
that was great. That looked great. Who brought that?
I don't know who brought that.
Stefan and Daryl brought those. They found them on the internet. Found them on the FFG forums. Someone made them there. They're available there.
Oh, sweet.
But
I feel another 50 pieces of awesome coming in somebody's future.
Yeah, for a one-shot game, having that tiny little bookmark was perfect, because then I could just put that in front of the new players like Harrison and Jay Raz's nephew, Matt Raz, and put them in front of those players and say, here, this is what you need to go by when you're...
that was like the kicker for Harrison. He's like, I looked at this, went through it, made a roll on my own. You were forcing him to create his own die pool, and he's like, then he got it. He's like, oh, okay, that's very intuitive. So it's things like that, and you can even put little cheat sheets on your PreGem page too. You don't have to have a separate sheet for it if you could fit it. Those kinds of things. And I'm sure there are cheat sheets for other games that you can come together.
Well, the Star Wars ones have them, right? The sidebars on the character sheet. So.
Yep. Some of on my Star Wars sheets that Chris created for me, we put them around the border. Cheat sheets. There is also, if you're going to be running, whether it's Genesis or whether you're running Star Wars, there's a playmat that you can buy from FFG. It's a neoprene playmat. It has a spot for the GM's story pool and or destiny pool, and it has a spot for you to put out for initiative, so keep track of initiative on it. And then on the bottom and around the edges, it has the dice symbols and how they cancel, and all of the I think also printed on it, it has what you can do in a turn.
I think so. Yeah.
So it's a very handy resource to have sitting at your table if you're going to be running something like that, whether you've done it yourself or whether you find something on the internet or buy something from the creator of the game. Yeah. Have a cheat sheet available for your players.
Yeah, going back to the PreGems too, because that's one advantage. Well, I don't know about Genesis, but probably I think I saw some sheets there, but that might have been sheets that you guys made. But I know that the Star Wars one, I mean, I don't think you can find better looking PreGems out there on the internet or wherever for RPG PreGems. I mean, this is top notch quality. You look at that and you're like, I want to play this. So
thanks, man.
If you have those, well, the ones that you guys make and then the ones that Fantasy Flight makes, I mean, half your job is done just by looking at those, because people want to play them, and also now you can build your adventure around them. And if you don't have the skills like you guys have to make these sheets, just use the ones that are already out there and build your adventure around it, because that prop is going to do half your work, basically.
The character sheet. And that's the thing, is the next thing I wanted to go over here is make enough of your PreGems. If you're going to run it for one shot, make give away the PreGems when you're done. A lot of players will want to keep those. That's memorable. That'll draw them back into playing that game again. They'll take that PreGem back home to their game group, and they're gonna, hey, look, I played this game, and this is how it runs. And you do this, you build your dice pool with these die, or whether it's Savage Worlds. Look, your stats are all right here. Your dice are your stats. Oh wow, this is amazing. I mean, whether if you're trying to showcase the game, have those available to give out. Whether it's that, or whether it's like Stefan giving away the toy Cadillacs at the end, or have
Cadillacs and dinosaurs.
If you're gonna run like a Deadlands game, have poker chips that you can give away at the end of the game. Things like that. Those are gonna make your game memorable. People are gonna want to come back to your table the next time.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
I'm just a cheap bastard. No, I thought about it, but just ink. Ink is expensive, so
it is.
Maybe I shouldn't have made them all laminated and all that, and just have them on the cheap. Because cardboard laminated, and I'm like, no, I'm not giving those away. I'm running it again.
That's right. There you go.
Yeah. But for I know maybe not for Genesis, but for Savage Worlds, you got the wild dice that you can give away, that type of thing. I mean, maybe if you guys one day want to make your custom dice, and
well, I did think about doing custom D10s, a set of custom D10s, one with our logo on for the 10, and the other one with the Nerds International logo on it, for doing percentile dice for the. For crits, so
yeah, because you need those.
That's something I've thought about personally, but I hadn't brought to Chris yet. So hey, spring it on you, buddy.
Dude, that sounds like a great idea, Tony. Let's do it.
and something else too. I mean, I know not every GM used them, and they're not really all that necessary. But GM screens, even if you don't use them to roll behind the screen, what it does is it becomes like a panel that people walking by are going to see what game you're running. Like if you put nice wallpapers and it's Star Wars or Terranoth or whatever, people know
showcase, so to speak.
Yeah, that's what you're running. They don't even have to ask you, and photographic memory, they're going to see that. So eye candy. Basically.
That's a very good point. Very good point. And with those GM screens, if you need to track initiative, you can use, index cards or something like that and put on the kind of along the top. And that's an intuitive way to do initiative. That's what I do sometimes.
You can use a clip too, like Harrison did, and he had his handouts while you would show pictures of what we see, and you can do that from the internet too, from whatever. Hey, this is the jungle you guys are in. Cool. You put it on the other side of your screen. You clip it on there.
Can see it. Yeah.
Yep, they look at it. So there's lots you can do with a screen, even if you don't use it to roll behind it.
Yeah.
Great idea. Cool. I usually just lay mine flat to keep it the crit table out where I can see it.
Yeah. But me, I use it to like for that Wise Guys game that I ran. All my notes were inside my screen, so I didn't have to, because you put stuff on the table and then sooner or later you got your beer on top of it, you got your dice, you got your pen, you got your dice bag. The whole place gets cluttered, and then you're trying to dig that stuff out of there. Yep. So now my notes are on the inside of my screen. I just have to, I GM standing up like Tony, but I just have to lean over a little bit, look at my notes. Okay, that's where we're at, and let's move on.
All right. But being, and that's another thing is, as a GM, I GM standing up. I do that for one reason, because it forces the players to look at me by standing.
As much as we don't want to, good Lord.
I know, but when I'm dealing with a table of 8 players, particularly, I GM larger groups a lot more. It's just something I've always done larger groups. When I did D&D, I did groups of 8 to 10 players. I still do with Star Wars, groups of 8 to 10 players. Standing up when you have a larger group draws the attention to you more You can also engage with each individual a little easier. If you got to walk around the table to go talk to them, you don't have to, I got to get up, I got to move all my toys. Plus, that gives you another spot to place things. My chair now becomes a spot where I can put things.
There's that.
Chris is laid back. Chris stays on his chair and drinks his beer and rolls the dice. But it all depends on your personality. Chris has a voice that projects quite a bit. I don't, so that's why I stand up. And also, I become a lot more animated if I'm standing up. I can move around if I'm just sitting down on a chair. It's kind of subconscious, but your voice sort of starts to trail off, and then people can't hear you across the table. And I just feel it's a more engaging experience. That's why I do it. Quite a bit like Tony, basically. Except I don't put my hands behind my back, military style. I just move them a lot more.
That's just a natural habit, period.
Every picture you see Tony GMing, he's just standing like he's about to salute someone, or his hands behind his back,
or he's flexing with like a Wampa hat on.
I'm running that game, and then I know Harrison and I were doing a little bit of LARPing, but at some point I see Tony. Yeah, Tony was just running around the table with his Wampa hat, and I'm like, what the fuck's going on over here?
I was getting Matt Stark back for last year when he did that to me, where he just kind of got up in my face. So I put the Wampa hat on and charged him.
It was pretty good. That was awesome.
Anyhow, though, folks, that's pretty much running a con game as best as we know it. We're not experts. We're not the best at it. I'm sure there are people out there that are way better than we are. But, my first experience with it was a few years back. I ran something at a local convention that we have here called Marmalade Dog. It's run at a local college, and it's tiny, maybe 100 people convention. It's not huge, but that was my first experience with it. And then I started running things in game stores, started getting a little better at it, and then came to Con on the Cob with you guys. And you guys have seen where, I've grown from where I started out at, which was not doing very well at all. But you guys kind of got to see the polished product that
you need practice. It's a different ball game than campaigns. It's different pacing. Well, what I would add last to that is trim the fat or cut the crap for your game. You don't need a scene where the players go around for an hour looking for information to get to the next scene. Unless there's something interesting that's going to happen during that scene, just give him the information, have him move on. Don't start with a lame hook like a guy that's going to pay you to do something, and then he's going to say, do you want to do it? Well, of course they're going to want to do it. They sat there at your table to play the game. They're not going to trim that shit. It doesn't need to be in your game. They want to play the game. That's why they're there.
That's right.
Tell them. Don't ask them. Tell them why they're doing what they're doing. That's it. That's all.
Putting them on the rails is okay in a con game. It really is. They'll just have fun. Yeah. In other ways, it's all right. It really is.
Memorable NPCs. We didn't really cover that much, but memorable NPCs. If you're going to have, not everybody can do voices for their NPCs, but have some sort of every NPC that they interact with. If they're going to have an interpersonal interaction with them, give that NPC a quirk of some kind.
Whatever it might be.
Something that makes them memorable. They stutter, or they wear a goofy hat, or they have a little child running around their legs that just is always constantly distracting them, or something. Yep.
Yeah. That one trick for that is just grab inspiration from someone you know in your life, or a celebrity, a character, or favorite character on a TV show. I mean, it's not going to be all that original. If it's character from a TV show, you want Peter Griffin to be in your game. No, it's not original, but people are still going to have fun with it, especially if you can do a good impression of him. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I guarantee if your players are going along and you're playing in a Wise Guys game and all of a sudden they take a cab and there's this scene in a cab where they're going to get run off the road by some other gang and you have the cab driver being Peter Griffin, that'd be damn funny.
Yeah. even in fantasy, why not? In fantasy, there's the coach driver or the keep is Peter Griffin. That's going to be memorable right there. And yeah.
I think one thing, the last thing that I have to add, and it's just restating what Tony had mentioned before, was don't open the books. Know the rules of your game. Keep it flowing. That's really it, and and just let them know at the very beginning that this is the way I'm going to run it. We're going to lean to the side of having fun, and just trust me, it's going to be fun. I'm going to lean towards, you guys having fun, not to screw you over or anything like that, So
confidence is a big thing for a con game. Even if you don't know what you're doing, or you don't feel like you know what you're doing, conduct yourself as if you do. It's gonna make the big difference.
There you go.
Fake it till you make it.
Oh, well said. All right.
Well, I think we've put this horse to bed. What do you think?
Yep.
Yeah, and the head might just be in our bed with us, right? Oh.
Yeah.
See what I did there?
I see what you did there.
Yeah, man.
You did a thing, eh?
Yeah, I did a thing, you mooly. That's right. All right, we going on to the next section here. We gonna go set the tone or what?
Well, I don't know. Let's see.
All right.
Welcome to Advantageous Threats. Yes, folks, we skipped setting the tone because, well, in our Advantageous Threats, we're kind of setting the tone for kind of a mobsters type game. Yeah. So what I've got here is I'm GMing a 1990s mob style game, and my NPC is Consigliere, Tony 2 times Scaramucci. Now, why is he called Tony 2 times? Because there was a guy that said his name 3 times in succession one time, and he cut his fucking balls off, okay? So that's why they call him Tony 2 times, because you don't say his name more than 2 times. All right, so he's visiting the player's bar/hangout, and he's initiated a social combat with them and won the initiative. Mm-hmm. Tony 2 times is starting off ordering the leader NPC, or leader player character, whoever that may be, to hide his son, Vincenzo, who is wanted for murder in one of the party's houses. So in this, I have set the scene. This is a social combat. Either my NPC is going to wear down the player's strain to 0, or the players are going to wear it down, or half, or the players are going to wear his down to 0 or half via a series of checks back and forth, social checks, using leadership, negotiation, coercion, charm, cool, all of the wheelhouse of the social intercourse. Ooh.
Oh my.
But anyhow,
it's not very ergonomic there.
Right, like that keyboard you got, the ergonomic keyboard.
Yeah, exactly. So anyhow, Tony 2 times here has a presence of 3 and leadership of 3. So he's going to start the game with a 3 yellow pool versus the lead player. We have not named yet.
Actually,
the lead player.
We kind of have, because I'm actually going to be playing the leader in mine after this.
Okay. So that is, you've kind of named him, but for now I'll leave him unnamed. I'll let you name him when it comes to your segment.
Yeah, man.
Anyhow, his that player's willpower and discipline is what I'm opposed on here. Yep. And so the player's willpower is 3, which is a dice pool of 3 with a discipline of 1, making one of those red. And then also that player has the clever retort talent, which is going to generate 2 automatic threats. So I just take 2 of my setback dice and set them aside with a threat showing on each
That's
one.
right. And this leader, I'll tell you his name. This leader's name is Chris Candy Cane Mercurio. They call him Candy Cane because he's always sucking on a candy cane, and he kind of sucks it down to a shiv. And you fuck with him, he's gonna shiv you with the damn candy cane.
Nice.
It's close to Christmas. I figured it was inspired.
I like it.
All right.
So in this case, I'm gonna say since Tony Two Times has a couple of his muscle with him, I'm gonna give him a boost die. Now, as players, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Well, the fact that this guy, we're going to be hiding somebody who was wanted for murder, is going to get our back up a little bit. And you are in our hangout, so that might be worth a setback die.
In your own home? Yeah, sure.
In our own home, probably setback die.
Okay, all right. Sounds good. I'm going to go ahead and flip one of the GM story points.
Okay.
And upgrade also.
Yeah, and
because I kind of want to start this off as putting you guys back on your heels. So.
Yeah. I want to flip a story point because this guy's wanted for murder, and there could be hilarity ensuing after this.
All right, so let's pull it out. First of all, I'll take the blanks out of the pool, and I rolled. Got to add my 2 threat that were sitting off to the side.
Yes.
So I rolled a grand total of 1 failure, 2 threat. So right away, I immediately come off as just this bossy asshole he really has no pull over this crew.
Mm-hmm.
He's just trying to come in and show off and order them around because he thinks he can. And so that's the failure.
That's the failure. Do you have threat or do you have advantage? You have threat. You had 2 threat?
Mm-hmm. Oh, he just lost face there.
That guy?
Consigliere, you're the leader, probably a captain.
Yeah.
Maybe you want his spot, and you can use that to set him up for a hit later. You can use that, turn that into advantages for bonus dice or whatever for later on.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like that. I like that a lot.
All right, so that would be the first one. So in other words, I didn't even score a hit. Nothing. I got nothing.
No,
I got nothing.
That's right. You don't have nothing, and because you don't have nothing, the Candy Cane is gonna want something from you. So I think there's probably gonna be I think my response. See, the thing is, I didn't write down what I was gonna do. I just wanted to kind of see how what your thing was. So when it's my turn. You know what? I want to make maybe a negotiation check here to try and get something out of this. Yeah, we're gonna hide your son. I'm gonna want something in return, or whatever.
Okay. All right. So let's set the pool. What's your negotiation?
Going off at a tirade of times. Okay. My negotiation. I didn't put any points into it.
Okay, so it's going to be straight presence.
Probably. He's got a presence of 3.
Okay.
All right.
And then in return, I would say probably don't have any points in negotiation either.
Okay.
For the NPC, so it's probably 3 versus 3 straight.
3 versus 3. Okay.
So you want a piece of one of his rackets, or maybe you want him to negotiate a deal with another Meg guy later, so you can make more money out of this.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna. Yeah, that's what we'll do here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, so right now your pool is 3 green versus 3 purple. Now I would say you probably, since you're coming from a position of strength now, from my 2 threat, throw in a boost die.
Okay. And I think I really want to get this guy's protection racket that he's got down on the south side. So I'm going to flip a story point.
Okay.
Make one of those greens a yellow. Thanks, Eric, for that.
All right.
idea.
Well, I still have my 2 muscle guys here.
Okay.
They both have a bad reputation for being short-tempered. So go ahead and throw in a setback die.
And a setback die. All right.
And because this is an adversary,
Ooh.
this guy is a consigliere. Mm-hmm. He is adversary 2. We're going to go ahead and upgrade your check twice.
Well
because
done.
You can add the adversary talent into social combats.
Well done. I like that.
And that I will not be adjusting the pool any further. You may roll.
Okay.
I think you're going to get whacked.
I might have to get whacked. We'll see. Negotiating for some more territory. Holy failures, Batman.
Sounds like a theme.
There is a failure. Yeah. Okay, so I got 3 failures, but 2 advantage.
Oh, nice.
Here, so yeah, so I probably don't succeed on negotiating that. What do you call it? Turning over like some of his space.
No, but you notice one of. So I would say with the 2 advantage, what do you want to notice? A detail of some kind? Or something? What do you want to do? You want to pass that into the next?
Oh, you know what? I'm thinking that Candy Cane spent some time with one of these guys one of this guy's muscle. He's like, "Hey, we spent some time there. I know what you did in there. You off." And he just kind of goes on to maybe an interlude.
Okay.
And talks about just how this one of those bodyguards is just rolled over in prison on somebody, became somebody's bitch or something.
So you negate Tony's boost die from having his muscle there. Now the muscle no longer adds strength to his argument.
I think so. Yeah, with a couple advantage for the next player or whatever coming up.
Nice. I like it. All right. So then we go back and forth with an interchange of social
failing to not
arguments.
Failing to not doing any strain to anybody either.
Until either this devolves into a firefight.
Could have been that you had dirt on the consigliere, that he was hiding money, some of the kick-up money from.
There you go.
From his rackets to the boss, and then you're gonna, threaten him that you were gonna bring this up if he doesn't back off.
Yeah, there you go. That's cool too.
Yep. There's all kinds of different ways you could use that. Mm-hmm. Again, we would go back and forth with a social combat until one of us capitulated. Probably would set this because we're probably equally matched. We'd probably set this till one of us gets half strain as a GM. That's usually the rule.
Yeah.
Somebody's not willing to work with you until they hit half strain.
Yeah.
And as a player, you kind of be ready to, when the GM gets you to half strain, you got to kind of, okay, we're going to give in a little bit. So.
Yep.
Yeah, you got to play dirty, because in the mob, I mean, the hierarchy is really strong. Consigliere is basically the third in command after the boss.
Okay.
So they usually, when they tell someone below them to do something, you better do it, or else, like a capo. Usually, it would be the underboss that would say something, but the consigliere can as well. But that's when you're walking the line there.
When he's going outside, basically he's going outside of his organization, going to somebody else's guys, asking them for a favor. And that's why while he does come from that position of strength as the third in command of that particular mob, he might not necessarily have strength with this crew completely. He doesn't have complete control over the situation. So it has to be a little bit of give and take back and forth. Before someone gives it.
It's a game too, so there's some things from reality that you have to kind of push aside for a game. Then that's what makes it fun too. So, absolutely.
And you can read up on a lot of this stuff, how the mob is organized and stuff, in the Wise Guys demo kit, right? Got some of that in there, right? Yeah, man.
And eventually in the setting book that Eric is writing, that will be kickstarted sometime next year.
Yeah, hopefully early next year with great artwork. Well, that's what we're doing it to get more artwork, and it's going to be packed full of good stuff there. A lot of research went into this.
Nice. All right.
So did you have anything else you want to do, Eric? Did you want to do an advantageous threat of your own, or are you good?
No, I'm good with what you guys got and playing the peanut gallery here and stuff like that. Yeah.
That's what most of our guests like to do. They just like to throw shit in.
Exactly. It's fun.
All right.
It's all fun. All right, man. So we ready to wrap up this thing?
Yeah, let's go home.
Okay. All right, everybody, that's our show, The Con Job, with Eric No Sleeves Lamoureux. I want to give a shout out to his podcast, the Wild Eye Podcast, that's dedicated to Pinnacle Entertainment Group's of Savage Worlds, where you guys discuss, I don't know, everything gaming related to Savage Worlds. You, Gary, and Harrison, right? Pretty much.
Sometimes not about Savage Worlds, just about a bunch of stuff that happens in our lives, especially with Gary. But yeah, we've been going on for 3 years now.
3 years? Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, over 100 episodes, still going strong. And now the PDF for the Savage Worlds Adventure Edition just came out. So we started releasing episodes about that. We started playing it, and we're taking it on the angle of not just reading the book and saying, hey, this is what's going on. We're going off of what we played, how we experienced it, and what we think about it, and what we don't like, and that kind of stuff. So it's a lot of fun. We just played again this weekend, so we'll have a lot to talk about. How Gary's character and my character ended up dead 2 sessions into a campaign. So
holy crap!
Well, they don't call it Savage Worlds for nothing, right?
That's right. I mean, it's pretty lethal now. So yeah.
Oh wow!
So
was that one of the big things? The lethality of it has been cranked up to 11.
Well, it looks that way. I mean, you read it and it looks like the power level for the players just went up, but you keep reading it and then the power level for the monster just went up because now they have more wounds. The bigger they are, the more wounds they have.
Okay.
And
hey, that's something I used to do with regular Savage Worlds.
Did you? There you go. Yeah.
Cool.
That's one thing. You play that game and you realize, hey, that was a house rule when I play, now it's part of the actual game. So, but yeah, you put all that together and it seems like it's just a Spinal Tap effect of turning it up to 11, and then things just go even more crazy. So we're learning the game together now and having a lot of fun, a lot of humor, just like with you guys when you get Harrison doing jingles and cracking jokes, and Gary and me playing the straight man, because every good comedy team needs a straight man.
Really? Who's our straight man?
It falls on
Tony.
I don't know.
I don't know if there is one. We'll get Stefan in here to be our straight man, right?
Well, it's the difference between a 3-man dichotomy versus a 2-man. We're just kind of Laurel and Hardy.
Mm-hmm.
There is that.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, so if you're any bit curious about it, just find us on, we're everywhere. iTunes, Podbean, Google Play, Pornhub, we're everywhere.
Nice.
Pornhub.
Yeah, your email is thewilddie@gmail.com, right? If they want to email you.
That's right.
So we can send you pictures to put on your Pornhub account or whatever, right?
That's right. Richard Picks.
That's right.
Pictures. Yeah.
Johnson selfies. Yeah, I hear you.
That's right. Yeah.
So you guys have so you guys did your own review of At Con on the Cob. Then one of your bonus episodes. I do have your recent episode being the superheroes and villains one, but you released one since I wrote these show notes. So what you got going on? What you have done recently?
Yeah, that's the one I was just talking about. The one with the new edition. That was our first. Right. That was our first spin from 2 games that we played. A Rippers game and then the Wise Guys game I ran on Jamie's show, the RPG Brewery. So we talked about what happened there, the new chase rules that are quite different, and the overall impressions, the look of the book and all that. But yeah, superheroes and Con on the Cob, just like you guys. We recorded that episode at Con on the Cob, like up in their room for 30 minutes. Just, yeah, that was fun.
Cool.
Yep. All right, so you can find them over at MeWe with the rest of us Nerds International folks. You can find me and Chris there. You can get a hold of us at findingthenarrativepodcast at gmail.com. Mm-hmm. You can get a hold of me on Facebook, and I'll get it back to Chris. And we're all on MeWe. Tell your friends where to find us: Podbean, iTunes, YouTube, and now Google Play. Sure. And so Eric, thanks for coming on the show, man.
Well, thanks for having me. It was a great time, guys.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we'll have you back on once Wise Guys drops and whatnot, and let you know how we've converted it to Genesys, right?
That'd be awesome. Maybe next year I get to play in my own setting and with you guys running it.
Maybe Chris will run you a Wise Guys something at Gen Con or at Con on the Cop. I already have mine
Wise Guys
set.
Genesys style. You know what? I will. I will say that right now. I will be running a Wise Guys Genesys game at Con on the Cob next year.
There you go.
Now I have
challenge.
There we go. Challenge accepted. And I'll do it. And if you bring your terrain, we'll do it.
Borrow that.
Yeah, can I borrow that fancy ass terrain? I'll let you borrow my chicken bone dice. If you want.
No, just make me some pancakes in the morning, some waffles.
Which by the way, I had to throw away the waffle maker. Fucking thing broke on the way home. Yeah, it's a damn fire hazard now. One of the legs broke off of it, so I could just see us now at burning down the Days Inn or whatever that is next year. Whew. All right.
So
thanks for coming on, buddy. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right. So this is Tony saying, "Keep rolling them bones."
And this is Chris saying, "Remember the rule of cool and just have fun, all."
Night, everybody.
All right.
Yeah. Forget about it.
Finding a Narrative Podcast is not affiliated with or endorsed by any companies mentioned on the show. Any of the products mentioned on our show or appear on our website are the property and copyright of their respected owners. All items are used under fair use and educational and review purposes. All other items are the intellectual property of Finding a Narrative Podcast. Copyright 2018, all rights reserved.